So, next phase is the assessment phase. There are as many assessments for transition as there are for speech and language and academic. I'm not going to tell you about all of the different kinds of assessments. I'm just going to tell you to watch for assessments in these areas. So we're going to look at all of these different areas: vocational skills, interests, ability to work, organization, speed of work. We're going to look at what kinds of curriculum a child may need, what their interests are, accommodations, specific work skills, general work behavior, attendance. We're going to look at hygiene. So we're looking at both hard skills, their ability to do a job, and soft skills, their ability to get along with coworkers and show up on time, their ability to sort of understand what's being asked of them and to perform the task. We're also looking at things like related skills, their ability to get to and from work. Is there a transportation option available to them? What does that look like? Do they know how to use it themselves, or will someone else have to set it up for them? Do they understand how to use their break time? Will they dress appropriately for work? Will they interact appropriately with customers? So we assess all of those things, because all of those things are fair game when it comes to transition planning, because all of those things impact your ability to live and work in your community. We start to develop goals in three main areas. Training and education is one area. Employment is the second area, and if appropriate, independent living skills. Here we're talking about accessing education, looking at adult education options as well as educational options within the school district. We're looking at employment options that are available through all types of different employment, so competitive employment, supported employment, and job training programs. We may be connecting to different agencies to help find jobs. And then we're talking about independent living and community participation as might be appropriate. When we look at drafting goals, we want our goals to be specific. I have a what not to do transition plan that I put in your materials that we'll look at when I'm finished with this. It was from an IEP meeting I went to this morning. But what I like to see is a specific, clearly defined behavior that we're going to target with performance criteria for mastery and an understanding as to how many times someone needs to perform the skill in order for us to know that we can check the box that it's done. So to have a good goal, you need to know how many times is the student able to do it correctly today. So let's take a dressing appropriately for work goal. And let's see, right now we have a student who doesn't always like to shower, likes to wear his sweatpants every day because, you know, things with buttons are uncomfortable, doesn't like the collared shirt, and the work uniform that his particular school has for their work days is khakis, sneakers, and a polo shirt. So what we have found is that 2 out of 5 days a week, he is appropriately wearing the full uniform. 3 out of 5 days, he is kind of showing up without the uniform, or the uniform that's in his bag is the one from 3 days ago. It wasn't washed. He didn't wear it to school. He brought it kind of wadded up, or it's all wrinkled. You know, we know that that's not appropriate attire for work. So we would draft a goal. So let's talk about drafting a goal. What would our goal look like? What do we want to see happen?
Try and get him to 3 days a week.
Okay, maybe we'll try to get him to 3 days. Who wants to go a little higher? Who wants to go to 4 days or 5 days?
I want 5.
Right, we want 5. The employer wants 5. But to your point, we may not be able to get to 5 in 1 year. So what is reasonable for this student? So let's define that. That's going to be our criteria for success. We want him to have or wear appropriate, wrinkle-free, clean work uniform. So we have a lot of conditions there. He can't just have the uniform. It needs to be clean, wrinkle-free, and the appropriate pieces. That's the kind of thing that I want to see. I want to see specific, measurable performance criteria, and then he's going to do that, whatever we decide is the goal. We may decide for the first year that 3 days is the best we're going to get, and that may be a goal that we continue to 4 days the following year and 5 days the year after that. I'm going to move through a couple of these slides because I want us to get to a component that's kind of an interactive component. And these are some services that I think you might want for that interactive piece. This slide right here, you put a big star next to it. This highlights some of the things that I like to see as specific goals and transition activities. What you'll see on this slide are things like addressing areas such as self-determination, disability awareness. What kinds of study skills is a child going to need to access further education? What kind of occupational skill training is necessary? What kind of on-the-job training? Community experience. How can we apply learning in authentic ways? Oftentimes that looks like going out into the community, making purchases, going out into the community, attending church services, going out into the community, joining a gym, participating in a fitness class, going to the pharmacy and picking up your meds. And so we really want to look for authentic, real experiences, and we want to build someone's ability to do it themselves. Related services, we might be looking at technology, counseling, rehabilitation services, professional services, budgeting supports, daily living, cooking, money skills, health training, home repair, home economics, travel training. Travel training is a big one. A lot of our kids don't drive. And in order to work or function in the community, they have to have transportation. How are they going to access a job if they can't access public transportation? This is easier in some communities than it is in others, but knowing how to make a phone call and schedule for an appointment is critical. Linkages with adult services, and again, oftentimes a transition activity may be to schedule an appointment with opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities to see if we can find a summer job and bring them in to help us find a summer job, to provide job coaching skills, and to provide the supports needed to pick up a part-time job. And that's a critical skill that a lot of kids without disabilities gain in high school. So why isn't that a critical skill that our kids with disabilities gain in high school? They should have a part-time job too. It may not be as independent as some of their peers, but there should be opportunities that the IEP team is considering to link to adult services to do that. Some of these next slides deal with data and making data-driven decisions. I'm going to skip them and trust that you are going to go home and study them very specifically, all on your own. I'm talking about knowing how often a child can do something when you start and creating a data collection plan to make sure that this gets done. One thing that is unique about the transition plan on an IEP is that it does not appear on your IEP progress report anywhere. So, how do you address that? You take some of the goals and you write them into the IEP as a separate goal. And when the IEP team tells you that that's not necessary because it appears in the transition plan, you tell them that it is necessary because you want to see the data collected to ensure progress is being made on all of those activities. These are some forms and sources of data. I want you to go ahead, take a look at these things. How do we assess students? We use things like grading scales. We collect samples of the work. We put together portfolios. Portfolios are great when we're talking about researching colleges, researching job options under certain categories. We can maintain a portfolio of the work that's done and use that as our structure for reporting whether or not we're meeting the goals. We can use checklists, and we can record those checklists and the performance. So we want to make sure to maintain data so that we can show that it's been done. And that's what these several slides talk about. 5 must-haves in a goal statement. We've talked about this a little bit already. The child's name, what it is we want the child to do to complete the goal. We want it to be specific and concrete. We want all the conditions, the setting, the materials that are going to be given so that we know what the layout is going to look like. How many times does it have to be performed for it to be mastered? And how many times do they have to reach that criteria in order to say that the goal is completed? One critical question. Whenever you look at a goal in your IEP, you should be able to answer this question. How often can the child do it now? If you don't know where you're starting from, there is no way to measure whether or not you've made progress. So when you look at a goal, whether it's in the transition services statement or whether it's in your IEP in step 6, all those goals we've been working on, if you can't answer the question, how often can we do it today, you will not be able to answer the question whether or not you've made progress. So there should be data in the IEP telling you how frequently it's done today, and that should occur for all of your transition statement goals as well.